Cecilia.
Thank you, Sarah. The president says that when Steve Bannon was fired, he not only lost his job, he lost his mind. Does he feel betrayed by Steve Bannon? Does he regret hiring him?
I think the president's statement is extremely clear what his position on Mr. Bannon is. It was pretty lengthy and pretty detailed. It hasn't changed, and his agenda hasn't changed. And we're continuing to accomplish a lot of the things that were on the president's agenda as we did last year, and we're going to do a lot more this year as we move into the beginning of 2018. Peter?
A couple questions. I'll try to make these simple. First, did the president's
You don't think I can handle the hard ones?
Did the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., commit treason?
I think that is a ridiculous accusation, and one that I'm pretty sure we've addressed many times from here before. And if that's in reference to comments made by Mr. Bannon, I'd refer you back to the ones that he made previously on 60 Minutes, where he called the collusion with Russia about this president a total farce. So I think I would look back at that. If anybody's been inconsistent, it's been him. Certainly hasn't been the president or this administration.
Any of Donald Trump Jr.'s guests at that June 2016 Trump Tower meeting on that day?
As the president has stated many times, no, and he wasn't part or aware of that.
Finally,
John Decker?
If I can ask you, after the tweet about nuclear threats, the nuclear button tweet, should Americans be concerned about the president's mental fitness, that he appears to be speaking so lightly about threats regarding the nuclear button?
I think the president and the people of this country should be concerned about the mental fitness of the leader of North Korea. He's made repeated threats. He's tested missiles time and time again for years, and what his feelings are. Francesca?
Thank you, Sarah. But to pick up on that, this is a pretty dramatic falling out between the president and someone who worked on his campaign and also worked in this White House very close to him every day. And so I think everyone is wondering what led to this quite dramatic falling out, and was it the loss of Roy Moore in that Senate race that was mentioned in the statement? You mentioned that they had last talked in early December. Is this a direct response to Steve Bannon calling the president's son unpatriotic and saying that he committed treason?
I think there are a number of factors that played in. I would certainly think that going after the president's son in an absolutely outrageous and unprecedented way is probably not the best way to curry favor with anybody. Ashley?
Sarah, you mentioned the statement the president put out. It was very harsh, and it basically says the entire book is fiction. That said, a note explaining how the book came to be said that the authors conducted interviews for 18 months, including many with the president, spoke to over 200 people, many of the president's top aides and people.
He never actually sat down with the president, just to be very clear.
Well, two questions. Did they ever speak on
Since
the
the
phone?
president. There was one brief conversation that had nothing to do originally with the book. It was, I think, around 5 to 7 minutes in total since the president's taken office, and that's the only interaction that he's had. That's the only interaction that the president has had with Michael Wolff since he took office.
If you could reconcile the president's statement with the author's statement about how the book came to be.
I'm not sure what the author's statement is on how the book came to be. I know that the book has a lot of things so far of what we've seen that are completely untrue. You have many people that have quotes that are sourced to them that are now coming out publicly and saying that those things are not true. And so I can't speak to what the author's comments were. I can only speak for the White House. Darlene?
Does the White House have a copy of the book now?
I believe there may be some individuals that do. Jim?
Sarah, the president's statement suggests that Steve Bannon had very little influence in the White House, but the president himself elevated him to the same level as the chief of staff and put him on the National Security Council. How do you reconcile that?
I wouldn't say that he elevated him to the same level of the chief of staff, and I think that in the actions that Steve took, the president was clear that it didn't have a lot of influence on him or the decision-making process throughout the House. Margaret?
Can you clarify, because many of us here have seen Michael Wolff at the White House on multiple occasions. We've seen him firsthand, so we know he was here. Who gave him access to the White House? What was he here for? Can you explain any of that, since we don't have access to the laws?
Yeah, so far, from what I can tell of the roughly just over a dozen interactions that he had with officials at the White House, I think close to 95% were all done so at the request of Mr. Bannon.
So the compliance really, you would just say, came from Steve Bannon. Other White House officials were not working with him and helping to share
Any that did so far as we can tell, did so at the request of Mr. Bannon.
One more thing. It's been reported that he was furious when these reports first came out about what Bannon was quoted as saying. Is that an accurate depiction?
I think furious, disgusted would probably certainly fit when you make such outrageous claims and completely false claims against the president, his administration, and his family. Kevin?
Sarah, thanks. I wanted to ask you personally, and I know you speak on behalf of the president, on behalf of the American people, how surprised were you at what you read, these excerpts attributed to Mr. Bannon? Did that surprise you in any way, and if so, how?
Certainly surprising. I, for one, was somebody who very much believed that the president could and would win. Otherwise, I wouldn't have dedicated so much time to that. But not only that, I worked in the White House since the very first day, and a lot of the characterization that I saw that he was pushing out was the opposite of what I saw take place every